The centerpieces at my bridal luncheon were perfect. Ivory peonies and pale gold ribbon, exactly what I had described to my future mother-in-law 8 months earlier when she'd insisted on hosting it herself. I remember sitting at that long linen-covered table in the private dining room at the Palmetto Club. 40 women around me, most of them strangers who had known Carter's family for decades, and thinking, this is real. This is actually happening. I was 30 years old. I had worked my way from a marketing coordinator, making $38,000 a year, to a senior director position at a healthcare tech company. Managing a $4.2 million budget, leading a team of 9. I had done it without connections, without a safety net, without anyone handing me a single thing. Carter had told me that was one of the things he loved most about me. His words, not mine. Carter was everything I thought I was looking for. Steady, funny, attentive in that way that makes you feel like the most important person in the room. He came from a Nashville family that owned a small chain of car dealerships. Not flashy wealth, but the kind that had been quietly accumulating for 3 generations. His parents were always gracious on the surface. His mother had hugged me the first time we met and said I was just what this family needed. I had felt seen, I had felt welcomed. I should have asked what she meant by that. The luncheon was going smoothly. Mimosas, shrimp and grits, polite conversation about florists and honeymoon destinations. My future mother-in-law sat at one end of the table, presiding with that warmth I had come to recognize as performance. Warm the way a stage set is warm, designed for effect. At the other end, Carter's older sister, Ainsley, was watching me with a particular kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. Prison. Ainsley was 35, married to a man whose family owned half the commercial real estate in Brentwood, and had not worked since her wedding day. She had opinions about everything and phrased them all as gifts. She tapped her glass with a dessert spoon. The room quieted. I just want to say a few words about our girl, she started, standing and smoothing the front of her dress. We have all been waiting for Carter to find the right woman, and I think we can agree she found him first. Gentle laughter. She smiled like she was about to bestow something wonderful on me. Joining this family is a big deal, she continued, her voice carrying easily across the room. It comes with real responsibilities, real roles. Our mother has been the absolute backbone of this family her entire life. Keeping the social calendar, managing the household accounts, making sure everyone felt seen and loved and taken care of. That work is invisible, and it is invaluable. And as Carter brings, she looked at me, pausing for effect. As he brings someone new into our circle, we are all just hoping she'll understand what it truly means to be a Whitfield woman. She raised her glass. To our future sister-in-law, may she embrace the beautiful gift of being the heart of this family. We'll start small. The holiday dinners, helping Mom with the charity auction in the spring, keeping track of Dad's schedule, taking over the household coordination once they're settled. Just a few things, the little things that hold a family together. She was still smiling. We are so excited to welcome you. Few women around the table raised their glasses. Some looked at me, some looked at their plates. I set my mimosa down. There was a version of me that might have smiled and said thank you and saved it for the car ride home. That version would have called her sister and cried about it later and spent years slowly disappearing into a role she never agreed to take on. I was not that version. Ainsley, I said. My voice was completely even. Thank you for that. I have 2 quick questions if you don't mind. She blinked. Of course. Are these things you just described? The charity auction, the calendar management, the household coordination. Are they something Carter and I discussed and agreed to together? Or are they expectations your family is announcing to me publicly for the first time today? The room was perfectly silent. Somewhere a fork clinked against a plate and it sounded enormous. Ainsley's smile tightened at the corners. It's tradition. It's how we do things. I see. I nodded slowly. My second question is for everyone at this table, because I'm genuinely curious. What is the Whitfield man's equivalent, specifically? When Carter and I are building our life together, what responsibilities does he take on that are equal to the ones you just outlined for me? I let that sit for a moment. Or does the tradition only run in one direction? Nothing. The kind of silence that has actual weight. I picked up my bag from the back of my chair, pushed it onto my shoulder, and looked around at the flowers one more time. They really were beautiful. Thank you all so much for coming, I said. The room looks gorgeous. I'll be in touch. I walked out of the Palmetto Club at 2:17 in the afternoon. I made it to my car before I let myself cry, but only for 4 minutes. Then I stopped. I had work to do. Carter called 11 times before I got home. I sent everyone to voicemail. I knew what he was going to say. Ainsley didn't mean it like that. She just gets excited. You took it out of context. Can we please just talk about this? What I wasn't expecting was the text from his mother. Sweetheart, I heard you left early. Please don't be dramatic. Ainsley just loves Carter and wants the best for him. We'll chat more Sunday. Dramatic. I stared at that word for a long time. Then, I opened the folder on my laptop labeled House Documents. Abby. We had bought the house 8 months ago. A 3-bedroom craftsman in East Nashville, with original hardwood floors, and a kitchen I had already repainted in my head 6 different ways. The asking price was $565,000. I had contributed $113,000 to the down payment. That money represented 7 years of maxing my 401. Early, living below my means, investing carefully, and paying off my student loans ahead of schedule. Carter had put in $22,000. A birthday gift from his parents, he'd said with a small shrug, like it was incidental. Peem. We had signed the paperwork at a law office downtown. The attorney was a man named Hartley who had handled Whitfield family matters for 30 years. According to Carter's father, he had talked fast. Carter's father had nodded at things I didn't fully understand. I had been distracted by the joy of it. The thrill of finally owning something that was mine, ours, real. I had not read every page. I read them now. It took me 40 minutes to find it, buried in a supplemental filing attached to the main deed. A Tennessee Revocable Living Trust. Both our names were listed as beneficiaries, which had a perfectly reassuring ring to it. The trustee, the person with actual legal authority over the property, the power to sell, refinance, or transfer without requiring both signatures, was listed as Carter alone. I sat back in my chair and read it again. I had contributed 83% of the down payment. He held the legal key to the house. He could, on paper, sell it tomorrow without my knowledge or consent. I called Dana. Dana and I had been roommates sophomore year at Vanderbilt. She was now a real estate and family law attorney in Nashville, and she was the sharpest person I had ever met. She answered on the second ring. "Why are you calling me from a bridal luncheon?" she said. "I left the bridal luncheon." Beat of silence. "Okay, tell me." I told her everything. Ainsley's toast, the silence at the table, walking out, his mother's text. Then I told her about the document I was staring at. When I finished, she was quiet for a few seconds. "Send me the deed and trust paperwork, right now, all of it." I emailed it while we were still on the phone. "All right," she said after a few minutes. "This trust is real and it's legal in Tennessee. But here's the problem. Carter has unilateral control. Your $113,000 bought you a beneficial interest, which sounds like ownership, but means you have a financial stake with 0 operational authority. He is the sole trustee. In a real estate transaction, only his signature matters. He could sell the house without yours." My mouth had gone dry. Did he know that? "That," Dana said quietly, "is the question. Whether he structured it this way on purpose, or whether he just signed wherever Hartley pointed, and didn't bother to understand what he was agreeing to. Either answer is a problem for you." She was already thinking ahead, I could hear it. "Don't engage with him tonight. If he calls or texts, your only response is, 'I need some space to process.' Nothing else. Come to my office at 9 tomorrow morning." Carter came to my door. At 8 that evening. I watched through the peephole. I listened to the knocking, and then the long silence that followed. I read his texts as they came in. Can you please just pick up? This is getting ridiculous. I'm outside, please. Fine. You want space, you have it, but you're being unfair and you know it. Did not respond. I opened my notes app and wrote down every number I could remember. The down payment. The deposits already paid. Venue, photographer, caterer, florist. All vendors his mother had recommended. All of them paid with my money, I realized now. The joint checking account we had opened for household expenses, where I had recently noticed a series of Venmo transfers to a username I didn't recognize, each with the memo, "Thanks, bro," totaling $3,400 across 3 separate months. Carter had a college friend going through a hard time. He had mentioned it in passing. He had not mentioned using our shared account to quietly help him out. It was a structure. I just hadn't been looking at it that way until tonight. Dana's office faced the Cumberland River. She had coffee waiting, and the documents spread across her desk by the time I arrived. Good news and better news, she said. Good news, you have legal options. Better news, she turned her monitor toward me. I want you to search your text history with Carter from around the time you signed. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back 8 months. It took me 3 minutes to find it. Carter, October 11th. Just talked to Hartley, setting it up so we both own it equally. Joint ownership. Everything split right down the middle. It's ours, babe. Dana photographed the screen with her phone. That, she said, is fraudulent inducement. He represented equal joint ownership to you in writing. What was filed was materially different. She leaned back in her chair. We send a demand letter today, to Carter, to Hartley, and to the title company. They have 48 hours to convert the trust into true joint ownership with equal trustee authority. Or we file suit for fraud. We also freeze the joint checking account. The unauthorized transfers to a third party from that account are a separate issue, but they go in the letter. And if they don't agree? They will, she said simply. They will not want this in a courtroom. She paused then, in the way Dana always paused, before saying something she'd already fully decided on. I want you to go to dinner tonight, she said. At the Whitfield house. Let them think you're coming to make peace. Tennessee is a one-party consent state. You can record any conversation you're part of without disclosure. Let them talk. Let Carter's father explain the trust structure in his own words. She handed me a fresh coffee. Wear something comfortable. And bring your phone. Carter's mother opened the door of their Brentwood house with that familiar practiced warmth, pulling me into to hug before I had crossed the threshold. There she is, she said. I'm so glad you came to your senses. We all just love you, you know that. I smiled. My phone was recording in my coat pocket. Carter was already at the table. He stood when I walked in, searching my face for a read he couldn't get. His father, Roger, sat at the head of the table with the ease of a man who was used to being the most important person in any room. Ainsley was across from the chair that was clearly mine, her expression carefully neutral. Dinner started. Roger talked about the dealerships. His mother mentioned the spring charity auction. The food was good. I ate and listened and said very little. Then, his mother set her fork down and folded her hands on the table. Honey, I want to address what happened yesterday. Ainsley's words may have come out a little clunky, but her heart was in the right place. What she described, the family responsibilities, the coordinating, all of that, it's not a burden. It's what love looks like in this family. It's what Roger and I built everything on. I appreciate you saying that, I said. I kept my voice easy. I'm curious about something, though. The house Carter and I bought together. When I went through the documents this week, I noticed the trust structure has Carter listed as sole trustee. I looked at Roger, then back at his mother. Was that intentional? The temperature in the room dropped. Carter's hand stilled beside his water glass. Roger cleared his throat. It's a standard liability protection structure. Hartley uses it for all Whitfield family properties. There's nothing unusual about it. Right, I said. So if Carter decided tomorrow to sell the house, he wouldn't need my signature? No one answered. Carter, I said, looking at him directly. When you texted me in October and said we'd own it equally, joint ownership, everything right down the middle, did you know the trust gave you sole trustee authority? He looked at his father. In that single glance, I had my answer. Hartley explained it as a joint structure with a trust wrapper, Carter said. His voice was careful. That's what I understood it to be. Then, you and Hartley had a very different conversation than you had with me, I said. Ainsley put her wine glass down. You're being incredibly aggressive right now. I'm asking questions about a legal document that involves my life savings, I said. I'm happy to be more aggressive if that's what it takes. Carter's mother reached across the table and laid her hand over mine. It was cool and deliberate. This transactional thinking, she said softly, is exactly what worries us. Sweetheart, when you marry Carter, these things stop mattering. What's his is yours, and what's yours is his. That's how marriage works. Does it? I asked. Because right now I can see that I contributed $113,000 to this house, and your family holds the legal authority over that asset. I'd love to understand how it evens out. Roger's voice dropped into something that was meant to sound final. Young lady, we do not discuss finances at the dinner table in this family. With respect, Roger, I said, and my voice was the steadiest it had ever been. The way things work in this family is precisely what I came here to understand. I left before dessert. I sent the audio file to Dana from the driveway. Her reply came in 5 minutes. This is everything. Morning, don't answer his calls. Carter called 19 times that night. I silenced everyone. The demand letter went out at 8 the next morning. By noon, Hartley himself called Dana's office, smooth, reasonable, projecting the confidence of a man who had handled problems like this before. He offered to convert the deed to true joint ownership immediately if I agreed not to pursue further action. Dana declined. We wanted the property in my name alone, full restitution for every wedding deposit I had paid, and a signed, notarized acknowledgement from Carter stating that the trust structure had been misrepresented to me prior to signing. Hartley's tone changed. That's quite a demand. We have the text message, Dana said pleasantly. And we have the dinner recording. Would you like me to play the portion where Roger confirms the trust structure was intentional? By 4 that afternoon, Carter's father had authorized Hartley to settle. Carter came to my apartment one last time. He sat at my kitchen table and pressed both hands flat against the surface, like he needed to feel something solid. I didn't know, he said. I promise you. Hartley talked fast and my dad kept nodding and I signed where they told me to. Assume. I looked at him for a long moment. I believed part of it. I also believed that when his family needed him to pick a side, he would pick them. He had proved that at the luncheon, when he'd stayed at the table and let Ainsley finish her speech without saying a single word in my direction. That's not enough, I said. I know. His voice was flat, defeated. What do you need? The house in my name. Restitution for the deposits, and your signature confirming the trust was misrepresented. He flinched at the last one. That creates exposure for Hartley. That's between you and Hartley. He nodded once, slowly, and stood to leave. At the door he turned back, like he was going to say something that would change the shape of the room. But whatever it was, he didn't find it. He just left. The settlement took 11 days. Hartley pushed on the written acknowledgement. Dana pushed back without blinking. The end. Carter signed a private statement, witnessed and notarized, confirming that the Rokable Trust had granted him unilateral control, and that this had not been disclosed to me before I contributed to the purchase. It would not be published anywhere. It was mine to hold. The house was quit-claimed into my name. The wire transfer for the wedding deposits landed on a Tuesday morning while I was in a staff meeting. I looked at my phone under the table, saw the amount, and quietly returned my attention to the agenda. Ainsley texted me from an unknown number 3 days later. I hope you're proud of what you've done to this family. I forwarded it to Dana with the note for the file, then I blocked that number too. Carter called once more the following week. He was heading to visit a friend in Colorado. He didn't know how long he'd be gone. He was sorry. He hoped I was all right. I am, I told him, and I meant it in a way I hadn't expected to mean anything for a while. I listed the house 2 months later. It sold in 5 days for $588,000. The market had given me something while everything else was falling apart, and I was not going to turn it down. Shimony. The morning of closing, I stood in the empty house alone. Just me and the hardwood floors and the winter light coming through the front windows. I had loved this house. I had built a whole future in my head around what it would feel like to live here. That future had been a story someone else had drafted without telling me. I had almost signed my name to the last page without ever reading the beginning. Dana met me for lunch afterward, at a place in the Gulch we had been going to since we were 22. She ordered the salmon and told me I looked like a person who had just woken up from a long, very polite nightmare. "What do you want to do now?" she asked. "Invest some of it, save most of it." I turned my water glass in a slow circle on the table, and I keep thinking about all those vendor deposits. Every single one was a recommendation from his mother. The venue, the photographer, the florist. I paid for all of it, and I keep thinking about how many people are sitting in some version of that luncheon right now, without knowing they're already being managed. Without knowing there's a document they haven't read that already answers the question of how much they actually matter in the arrangement. Dana tilted her head. "Financial education workshops," I said. "For women, specifically before they combine finances with a partner. How to read a deed. What a trust structure actually means. Why you need your own attorney, not the family's attorney, when you're making major financial decisions with someone else." She was quiet for a moment, turning her fork over in her fingers. "I'll teach the legal portion," she said. "Pro bono." "Dana, you don't have to." "I know," she smiled. "When's the first session?" Pulled out my notebook. I had already drafted 3 modules. Dana looked at the pages and shook her head slowly. Pause. "They thought you were going to be so grateful to be included," she said. "They thought you'd keep your head down and not look too closely at anything." She handed the notebook back. "How'd that work out for them?" I closed the notebook and finished my coffee. Outside, the afternoon was bright and cold and entirely my own.